Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Mark Milke, who is Executive Director of Research for the Canadian Energy Centre. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
You bet, Mario. Thanks for having me.
Well, you put out some numbers, some interesting numbers just the other day about new Canadians, immigrants, and employment in the oil and gas sector in Canada. Let's talk a little bit about those numbers. First of all, Mark, when it comes to employment, tell me what your research found when it comes to immigrants and new Canadians.
Sure. My colleague Van Cachelam dug into the data from Statistics Canada. And what he found in this paper is that you've got almost 16,000 landed immigrants now working in the oil and gas sector in Canada, or at least as of 2020. And the nice thing about that number is that's about double, almost double the number back in 2006, the first year for which we have these statistics. So it shows actually a couple of things. It shows that despite the recent downturn in the oil and gas sector and in the economy, that there is increasing employment in the oil and gas sector by landed immigrants, and frankly, that's a good thing. It shows that they need talent, and they'll take talent from wherever they can get it around the world. So I think that's positive. But it also shows that look, this is a pretty diverse industry. I mean, diversity can be a buzzword that people don't really define. But look, if you're interested in how industries operate these days, there's no question that whether you look at immigrants, landed immigrants in this particular paper, or if you look at Indigenous folk in this country, which we've also done in past papers at the Canadian Energy Centre, that the oil and gas sector has a lot of different people working in it who benefit from a paycheck. So that's important to note.
Let me ask you, speaking of a paycheck, what you found in terms of salaries for newcomers when it comes to the oil and gas industry.
Sure. And this, by the way, is just the oil and gas extraction sector. So in the paper that Van, my colleague, and I put together, it doesn't even include pipelines. It doesn't include financing. It doesn't include working in other aspects of the energy sector or the oil and gas sector. So in the oil and gas extraction sector alone, the average landed immigrant income last year was about $2,200 per week. That's a pretty good salary. And in fact, to make some comparisons to make it real, other landed immigrants, for example, that work in farms and fishing or forestry earned about half that, about $1,100 per week, right? Or in manufacturing, for example, the salaries are around $1,300 per week. So it's about 70% higher than manufacturing if you work in the oil and gas sector as a landed immigrant. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. I'm just curious, Mark, what was the reason for the research, and why did you want to delve into these numbers?
Well, it actually came from my colleague Van Cachelam, and he's a recent landed immigrant himself. He's worked around the world. He's from India originally. But he's worked in Dubai, he's worked in some other countries, put together some neat indexes for Forbes. He was actually behind, if you've ever read Forbes and kind of their top 50 or 100 billionaires around the world or whatever it was, Van had a big hand in that over the years. But he came to Canada, in recent years and began to be employed in public policy, working with Jack Mintz, for example, at the University of Calgary Public Policy School. Yeah. So Van, as a landed immigrant, said, this is interesting. We know that a lot of people, do well because of the oil and gas sector. And most Canadians are quite happy that, we're a land of opportunity, because everyone's an immigrant if you go back far enough. Yeah. So, Van wanted to see exactly what the statistics were on landed immigrants in the oil and gas sector. So he came up with this and dug into some Statistics Canada data which we kind of ordered up in a platter from them. And that's what he found. And also that wages have been rising, by the way. So if you look back over time, you'll see that again, oil and gas sector wages have been rising pretty dramatically in comparison to, say, the average industrial wage or other professions such as manufacturing or aerospace or farms, fishing, and forestry. Yeah.
Now, Mark, I know the why of this part, of why this is happening is is there in terms of the money and the salaries. But I'm wondering if you could even speculate, what are the reasons that newcomers are coming to Canada to work in the oil patch?
Well, we didn't really dig into that data. I would suspect, though, it has a lot to do with specialized skills. So, for example, if you've got a particular engineering bent that maybe isn't available in the country at present, or maybe you're an entrepreneur who came here to start a small company, or you've got some specialized skill you can offer to the oil and gas extraction sector. So it could be any of the above reasons. We do know that oil and gas extraction actually is a pretty high skill, high education sector, right? Which explains some of the higher wages vis-a-vis other industries. So, that's probably part of it as well. If you're in another country and you're looking for stability, then work in the oil and gas sector, Canada, at least historically, has been attractive that way. So, for example, several years back, I gave a talk to a crowd in downtown Calgary, to an engineers association. I met people who, for example, came from Venezuela, and they left 10 years ago or more in some cases, because Venezuela was killing its oil and gas sector, right? Through really bad policy, through state nationalization, and just, a number of bad policies, anti-entrepreneur policies. And so you saw an exodus of oil and gas specialists go to other countries, including Canada. So, very simply, they wanted to come for a job and get away from Venezuela's brutal regime, which was destroying an entire sector and, frankly, destroying an entire country. And I'm glad that they're here. I mean, I don't, I want Canada to be competitive around the world. I would never rejoice at Venezuela killing its oil and gas sector or its economy, which it's done. I mean, I feel for Venezuelans. But Canada historically has been the beneficiary of bad policy elsewhere. So I guess the takeaway for us, of course, in Canada is, for politicians and others, don't kill our oil and gas sector. Other countries have done that. It would be tremendously unwise for us to do the same. And it would hurt immigrants, along with Indigenous Canadians, along with everyone else who works in the sector.
All right, super. Thanks for this, Mark. Just curious, what's up next in terms of your research? What's coming out next on your plate?
Well, a number of things over the summer, actually. We'll take a look at emissions again, greenhouse gas emissions on a per capita basis, correlated with the economy. We did this last summer. One of the things that people forget is you can't just measure per capita greenhouse gas emissions. You've also got to take into account, economic growth to do a fair comparison, right? It's not fair to compare, say, a depressed economy or a country that never grows in population, with one that does, like Canada. So we're going to update our emissions study, greenhouse gas emissions study, and show where Canada ranks, or its improvements, including in the oil sands and elsewhere. That'll probably be out early August.
Okay, super. Well, again, thanks very much for joining us today, Mark.
Thank you, Mario.
All right, that was Mark Milke, who is Executive Director of Research for the Canadian Energy Centre. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.